He never expected life to surprise him in such a quiet way. For years, his days had been measured, predictable, a rhythm of work, home, small routines that kept him busy but never really fulfilled. He moved through life carefully, keeping distance from anything that might disrupt the fragile balance he had built. Yet inside, there was a quiet longing, feeling that something important was missing. She lived her life with a different kind of quiet strength. Every action, every word was intentional, shaped by years of taking care of herself and others. She carried responsibilities that were often invisible to the world, yet she carried them without complaint. People admired her for her calm presence, her kindness, and her dependability. Few noticed the small hidden parts of her life, the dreams she kept to herself, the moments when she allowed herself to hope. They were strangers, moving through separate worlds. Yet life had begun to move them closer without either of them knowing it. Their first meeting was entirely ordinary, the kind of meeting that might easily be forgotten. A slight mix-up at a small cafe, a collision of hands reaching for the same menu, a quick apology, and a smile shared in passing. Nothing dramatic happened, no fireworks, no sudden awareness. Yet in that fleeting moment, both felt an unexplainable tug, a sense that something new had begun. He noticed how calm she seemed, even in the small flurry of confusion around them. She noticed the genuine interest in his eyes, how he seemed to listen, even to the most trivial words. There was no effort to impress, no attempt to charm. Just a quiet human connection, subtle and unexpected. After that day, both carried the memory without acknowledging it. He returned to his routines, and she to her responsibilities. But the thought of that brief encounter lingered. It returned during quiet moments when he was walking to work or making a cup of tea. It returned to her as she prepared for another long day, waiting for a task or a person that might never come. When they met again, it was as if the universe had decided to give them another chance. This time, the recognition was immediate, a small smile that spoke volumes without a word. Their conversation lasted longer, touching on mundane things at first, yet gradually moving into deeper topics. They discovered small truths about each other, the values they held, the fears they carried, the quiet hopes tucked away from the world. He learned that she found joy in simplicity, that she preferred honesty and sincerity over superficial charm. She learned that he carried both ambition and doubt, that beneath his careful exterior lay a man who wrestled with self-imposed expectations. They talked about work, dreams, frustrations, and everyday experiences. Each story building a subtle foundation of trust. Their connection grew slowly, deliberately. There was no rush, no pressure, just an unfolding of understanding. They began to recognize patterns in each other's behavior, habits that felt familiar and comforting. She noticed how he laughed freely, without restraint or pretense. And he noticed how her eyes reflected thoughtfulness and care. These small observations, seemingly trivial, started to form a deeper appreciation for one another. Weeks passed and their conversations deepened. They began to share vulnerabilities, the quiet pains they rarely admitted to others. He spoke about moments of loneliness, the weight of responsibility he carried silently. She shared stories of resilience, the challenges of putting others before herself. Each admission was met with respect, not judgment, creating a sense of safety that neither had experienced in a long time. Despite this growing closeness, both remained cautious. Life had taught them lessons about disappointment and loss. They understood the importance of boundaries and the fragility of hope. Yet even with caution, the pull toward one another strengthened, a magnetic force neither could ignore. He began to anticipate their encounters, finding himself rearranging his day to catch a glimpse of her presence, even briefly. She found herself looking forward to his messages or the sound of his voice, small sparks of joy lighting up ordinary moments. Both felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation, unsure how to name the emotions that had grown so quietly. One evening, their conversation stretched long into the night. They spoke about memories, small dreams, fears, and what it meant to feel truly understood. Around them, the world seemed to soften. The noise and rush of daily life fell away. In that space, neither felt the need to perform or impress. They were simply themselves, and that alone created a bond that felt rare and fragile in equal measure. After they parted that night, a profound awareness settled in each of them. Something significant had begun, something neither of them had expected. Their lives had intertwined in a way that felt both natural and extraordinary. A quiet miracle hidden within the ordinary flow of days. They walked home under the same city lights, feeling the world subtly shift, as if life itself had rearranged to accommodate this new connection in the days that followed. They carried a sense of anticipation and warmth, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. They did not rush, did not force declarations of affection, but allowed the relationship to evolve naturally. Each meeting, each conversation, added depth and texture, weaving a story of connection that was as much about understanding and presence as it was about love. He found himself noticing the little things, the way her hands moved when she spoke, the gentle expression in her eyes, the softness of her laughter. She noticed the steadiness in his voice, the subtle kindness in his gestures, the sense of safety that seemed to surround him. These details, small as they were, began to take on a significance neither had anticipated. Time seemed to slow when they were together. Ordinary moments, a shared cup of coffee, a quiet walk. Simple conversation became extraordinary because of the mutual presence and attention. There was no rush, no need to define what they felt, just a deepening sense that their lives were richer for having met. And yet, both understood that life was unpredictable. They did not know what challenges lay ahead, what obstacles might test the connection they were building. All they could do was continue with honesty and openness, letting the story unfold one small, meaningful moment at a time. In the quiet of their separate lives, each found themselves changed. He felt a softening, a willingness to embrace moments of joy without fear. She felt a growing sense of hope, a quiet confidence that her heart could be seen and valued. They had not yet spoken of love, yet it was present in every interaction, subtle but undeniable. The days continued, each bringing new encounters, small discoveries, shared laughter, and quiet understanding. Their bond, though young, felt grounded in truth, not fantasy. It was a romance that felt gentle, patient, and deeply human. Neither could predict what the future would bring, but both sensed that what they had begun was rare, something worth cherishing. And so, life moved on around them, busy and relentless. While a quiet story unfolded between two people who had met by chance, yet felt as though they had been meant to find each other all along. In that ordinary, unassuming way, a connection formed soft, steady, and profoundly real. A beginning that neither had anticipated but both quietly welcomed. Days turned into weeks, and their connection began to grow in ways neither of them had expected. It was not sudden or dramatic, but gentle and consistent, like the slow bloom of a flower that opens only when it feels ready. They spent more time together, not in grand gestures, but in small, meaningful moments that gradually built trust and comfort. He began to notice little things about her that he hadn't before: the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the quiet way she listened, the softness in her eyes when she laughed. Each detail added layers to the image of her in his mind, making him feel closer without needing to speak about it. He was learning to appreciate not just her presence but the subtle ways she moved through the world. She, in turn, observed him with a growing sense of curiosity and admiration. She noticed the careful thought behind his words, the way he paid attention to things most people overlooked, the small acts of kindness that came naturally to him. She realized that beneath his composed exterior, there was a depth of feeling that rarely showed itself, and it drew her in quietly, irresistibly. Their conversations became more personal. They talked about their families, the people who shaped them, and the lessons life had taught them. They shared memories, not just of happy times, but also moments of struggle and doubt. In these exchanges, they discovered a shared understanding of the complexities of life and the human heart. They did not rush into declarations of love, but the unspoken bond between them grew stronger each day. One evening, they went for a long walk through the city's streets. The night was calm, the air soft with a hint of warmth from the fading day. They walked side by side, occasionally falling into comfortable silence, each lost in thought, yet aware of the other's presence. He noticed the way she seemed at ease with him, as if the world outside their small bubble of conversation had no power over her peace. She noticed the quiet confidence he carried, the way he seemed completely himself, without needing to perform or impress. They stopped at a small park. Sitting on a bench under a tree whose branches stretched out like gentle arms, the conversation shifted to dreams they had long held in secret. He spoke about ambitions he had once thought impossible, fears that held him back, and hopes for a future he couldn't yet see clearly. She listened without interruption, offering no judgment, only presence and understanding. When it was her turn, she shared her own quiet desires. The dreams she had kept hidden, the ways she hoped to grow and live fully. Neither felt rushed. The words flowed naturally, forming a deeper connection between them in the following days. Their routines began to intertwine. He found himself adjusting his schedule slightly to meet her for coffee or a walk, small gestures that felt significant. She found herself looking forward to these moments, noticing how his presence brought a sense of calm and joy that she had not realized she was missing. The simplicity of these interactions made them feel real and attainable, unlike the rushed, fleeting relationships they had witnessed or experienced before. They laughed together often. Humor became a bridge between their hearts, allowing them to share vulnerabilities without fear. Even in the quiet moments, there was a sense of companionship that neither had expected to find so easily. They did not need grand expressions of affection. The comfort of being understood and accepted as they were became the foundation of their bond. Yet, life was never without its interruptions. Small challenges emerged, testing their growing connection. Work demands, personal responsibilities, and occasional misunderstandings created friction. There were moments of doubt, times when they questioned whether this easy companionship could withstand the pressures of the outside world. But each time they returned to each other, seeking clarity and reassurance in conversation, in presence, in shared understanding. He learned to be more patient, to listen without the need to offer solutions or advice, simply being there for her. She learned to open up more, to trust that her thoughts and feelings would be received with care. These lessons, learned in small, everyday exchanges, strengthened the bond between them in ways that were invisible to the outside observer, but profoundly felt by both. One afternoon, they attended a small local event together. The day was filled with ordinary pleasures, soft music, the aroma of fresh food, the hum of people enjoying themselves. Amidst the crowd, they found their own quiet moments, sharing observations and playful comments, noticing details that made the day memorable. By the end of the event, they felt a sense of shared experience that added another layer to their growing connection. As weeks passed, their relationship deepened further. They began to share fears and insecurities they had never revealed to others. He spoke of moments when he felt invisible, of times when his own doubts threatened to overwhelm him. She shared her struggles with feeling overlooked or undervalued, the quiet battles she fought daily. Each revelation was met with empathy and understanding, strengthening the trust that had been building steadily. Even in moments apart, they felt connected. A message sent at an unexpected time, a quick call to check in, or even a thought of the other would bring warmth and comfort. They were learning that presence was not just about physical proximity, but emotional awareness and care. Each gesture, no matter how small, reinforced the growing bond that neither had anticipated, but both cherished. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, they sat by a quiet riverside, sharing a simple meal they had brought. The conversation drifted from light topics to deeper reflections on life, love, and the passing of time. He spoke about the importance of small joys and the ways people often overlook the beauty in ordinary moments. She shared her belief in resilience and the quiet strength that comes from facing life's challenges with grace. In that shared understanding, they found a profound sense of connection, a realization that their bond was rooted in more than attraction. It was built on mutual respect, understanding, and care. The days continued to blend together, each interaction adding depth and texture to their relationship. They celebrated small victories together, supported each other through minor setbacks, and found joy in the simplicity of shared moments. The ordinary became extraordinary because of the presence and attention they gave each other. Life's challenges remained, but their growing connection offered a sense of stability and hope. They also discovered the importance of space and individuality. While their bond strengthened, they respected each other's need for personal time and reflection. He understood that she had responsibilities and commitments that required her focus, and she recognized that he needed moments of solitude to recharge. This mutual respect allowed their relationship to flourish naturally, without pressure or expectation. As they navigated these early stages, both became more aware of the impact the other had on their lives. His days felt brighter, more meaningful, simply because she was present. Her life felt lighter, more hopeful, because he listened, understood, and valued her as she truly was. They were learning that love, in its purest form, was not about grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but about consistency, presence, and the quiet care that grows over time, even as the world continued around them. Busy and unpredictable, they found solace in their connection. They knew that challenges would continue to arise, that life would not always be smooth or easy. But they also knew that the foundation they were building, a foundation of understanding, trust, and gentle care, was strong enough to endure the difficulties that lay ahead. By the end of this period, both felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the chance encounter that had brought them together, for the slow unfolding of a connection that felt real and rare, and for the comfort of having someone who truly saw and understood them. They did not need to label their feelings, for the bond itself was enough. A quiet certainty that something meaningful was blossoming between them. And so, life continued, weaving its ordinary patterns around them. While they nurtured a connection that was anything but ordinary, each day brought small joys, subtle discoveries, and the growing realization that love, when it develops naturally and patiently, can feel like a dream come true without ever needing to shout its presence. Time moved on, and the comfort and joy they found in each other's presence began to meet the reality of life. Small tensions, overlooked responsibilities, and outside expectations started to challenge the simplicity that had made their bond feel so easy. It was not anything dramatic at first, but the accumulation of small pressures made them notice things that had been invisible in the early days. He found himself working longer hours, trying to manage demands that left him tired and distracted. She also faced unexpected responsibilities that required her attention, pulling her focus away from their moments together. They began to notice a subtle friction in their conversations, minor misunderstandings, and occasional irritations that neither of them had anticipated. The sense of ease that had defined their connection began to feel fragile at times. One evening, after a particularly long day, they met to talk, but found the conversation harder than usual. He was preoccupied with stress, barely able to articulate his thoughts, and she was equally worn, her mind racing with worries and tasks she had not yet finished. They sat together, struggling to find the rhythm they had once taken for granted. Silence filled spaces where laughter had once lived. It was not a lack of feeling, but a challenge to maintain balance while life tested their patience. They realized that relationships, even those that felt effortless, could be tested by the ordinary pressures of life. Yet in facing these challenges, they began to understand more about each other. He saw her resilience in moments when she handled stress calmly, without letting it define her entire day. She noticed his commitment to doing his best, even when fatigue made him short-tempered or distracted. There was a quiet admiration that grew amidst the tension, the recognition that both were human and that imperfection was part of the journey. As the weeks went on, there were moments of doubt. He wondered whether their connection could survive the pressures that now seemed unavoidable. She questioned whether the comfort and trust they shared were enough to overcome the small obstacles that appeared daily. They both struggled internally, trying to balance care for each other with the realities that demanded their attention elsewhere. Communication became more intentional. They began to set aside time specifically to be together, to talk without interruptions and without distraction. These moments were brief but meaningful, a conscious effort to maintain connection despite the challenges. They discovered that expressing feelings honestly, even when difficult, prevented misunderstandings from growing into distance. It was in these deliberate exchanges that the depth of their bond strengthened. He shared his frustrations openly, explaining the weight of expectations he carried and the worry that he was not meeting them. She listened carefully, offering understanding and gentle encouragement, reinforcing the idea that he was not alone in facing life's demands. She too shared her concerns and fears, acknowledging the strain of responsibilities that often went unnoticed. He responded with patience, validating her feelings and supporting her without judgment. Together, they learned the importance of empathy in sustaining a relationship. It was no longer enough to simply enjoy each other's presence. They had to actively consider the challenges the other faced. They began to recognize the small sacrifices made daily, the unspoken efforts, and the emotional labor that contributed to the bond they shared. Appreciation became a conscious practice, rather than something assumed or taken for granted. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves caught in a sudden storm while walking. They laughed through the inconvenience, holding umbrellas and trying to shield each other from the rain. In that moment, the frustration of the day fell away. The laughter, the shared effort, the playful teasing, it reminded them why they had connected in the first place. It was a small, almost insignificant incident, but it carried a weight of meaning that reaffirmed the value of their bond. Life's pressures continued, but they learned to navigate them together. They began to anticipate each other's moods, offering support before words were needed. He would bring small gestures of care when she seemed stressed, a quiet cup of tea, a message of encouragement, or a simple smile that spoke volumes. She offered similar gestures, understanding when silence or presence was more valuable than advice or conversation. These acts of care became a language unique to them, strengthening the relationship without fanfare or declaration. There were moments of regret and guilt too. Times when words were sharp, patience ran thin, or misunderstandings occurred. But they addressed these moments with honesty, reflecting on mistakes and reaffirming commitment to understanding each other better. They realized that love was not just in joy and comfort, but also in patience, forgiveness, and the willingness to grow together through challenges. Amidst the tests, they also experienced moments of profound closeness. Late-night conversations, quiet walks, and shared silence became opportunities for reflection and connection. They talked about their pasts more openly, revealing experiences that had shaped them, fears that lingered, and lessons learned. These moments of vulnerability built trust that went beyond words, creating a sense of safety and intimacy that deepened the emotional bond. He found comfort in knowing that she accepted him despite his flaws and missteps, and she found reassurance in his steady presence and genuine care. Together, they began to understand that love was not a fleeting feeling of excitement, but a deliberate choice to be present, supportive, and patient with one another. It was about showing up even when circumstances were not perfect. One weekend, they decided to take a short trip outside the city. The change of scenery brought a renewed sense of closeness. They explored quiet streets, sat by rivers, and shared simple meals. The absence of daily pressures allowed them to reconnect fully, reminding them of the joy in each other's company. It was not a dramatic escape, but a gentle reminder that love could flourish when nurtured with attention and care. Through these experiences, they learned that challenges did not diminish the bond they shared. Rather, they provided opportunities to strengthen it. Every misunderstanding clarified communication. Every obstacle reinforced patience, and every small gesture of care confirmed their commitment. The relationship became a living thing, responsive and evolving. Shaped by both joy and difficulty, they began to recognize the depth of their feelings without needing to label them. Attraction and affection had grown into a steady, reassuring presence, a sense of home found in each other. It was a love that felt real, grounded in the reality of life rather than fantasy or idealization. They did not rush to define it with words, understanding that actions, consistency, and shared experiences spoke louder than labels. Even when apart, they felt connected. Messages, thoughts, and anticipation for the next meeting became small threads, weaving them together throughout the day. They learned to find joy in the ordinary, in the subtle, quiet moments that made the relationship resilient and sustainable. The love that had once seemed effortless now required attention, understanding, and patience, but it became richer for the effort. As time passed, they reached a point of quiet confidence in their bond. They knew that challenges would continue to arise, that life's unpredictability could test them again, but they also knew that the foundation they were building was strong. They had discovered the importance of communication, empathy, and care, realizing that love was as much about support during trials as it was about sharing joy. In this period of growth and testing, both felt a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the chance encounter that had begun their story, for the slow unfolding of a connection that was meaningful and rare, and for the commitment to face challenges together. They understood that love, when nurtured through both comfort and difficulty, could become something enduring and real. And so their story continued, marked by moments of challenge and moments of connection, each shaping the relationship into something resilient and genuine. They were learning that love was not only the dreamlike moments of happiness, but also the steady, quiet dedication to understanding and supporting each other through life's uncertainties. In the midst of ordinary life, they were building a love that felt extraordinary, a connection that would endure because it was rooted in patience, empathy, and the willingness to grow together. Life, however, has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. As their connection deepened, unforeseen challenges began to appear. Responsibilities that had once seemed manageable grew heavier, and both found themselves stretched in ways they had not anticipated. The stress of work, family obligations, and personal pressures created distance. Sometimes small and subtle, sometimes more noticeable, they had to navigate not only the external challenges, but also the internal struggles that came with uncertainty and doubt. One morning, he received news that demanded immediate attention. Pulling him away from the life he had been carefully balancing, she understood, offering support without complaint. But the shift in routine reminded them both of how delicate the balance of their relationship could be. They realized that love, no matter how strong, could not exist in a vacuum. It had to survive the interruptions and pressures of real life. At the same time, she faced her own trials. Responsibilities at work intensified, and a family matter required her presence and energy. She struggled to manage the demands while trying to maintain the connection that had become so precious. She felt torn between the obligations that defined her days and the desire to nurture the relationship that brought her joy. The tension was not dramatic or overwhelming, but it was enough to create moments of frustration and worry. They spent time apart more often than before, communicating in brief messages or short calls, trying to bridge the gap without imposing on each other's obligations. The absence highlighted how much they valued the presence of one another, but it also introduced the fear that distance, however temporary, might erode the bond they had built. Both recognized the need to adjust, to learn patience and understanding in ways they had not yet practiced. During one particularly quiet evening, they met to talk openly about the changes in their lives. They acknowledged the stress, the worries, and the moments of doubt, speaking honestly about the ways life had begun to test them. In that conversation, they found clarity and renewed commitment. They understood that challenges were not a sign of weakness in their connection, but a natural part of living fully. Facing difficulties together became a new form of intimacy, one that required honesty, vulnerability, and care. He shared his fears about failing to be present, about not giving enough time or attention to someone he deeply cared for. She admitted to feeling overwhelmed, unsure how to balance her responsibilities with her desire to nurture their bond. In listening to each other, they found empathy and reassurance, realizing that love was not about perfection, but about willingness to be patient, understanding, and consistent. They also discovered that distance and separation could be opportunities for growth. He used the time apart to reflect on his priorities, understanding better how to manage stress without letting it affect the relationship. She took moments to focus on herself, recognizing that caring for her own needs was essential to sustaining her capacity to love and support someone else. The time apart, though challenging, reinforced the importance of balance and self-awareness. Amid the difficulties, They found ways to create meaningful moments, even in small gestures. A carefully written message, a thoughtful gift, a phone call at the right time. These acts of consideration became threads that maintained the connection. Proving that love could thrive even when life seemed busy or complicated, they learned to celebrate these small victories. Understanding that consistency and intention mattered as much as grand romantic gestures. One weekend, they decided to take a brief retreat to the countryside. Seeking relief from the pressures of their daily lives, the quiet landscape, open skies, and simplicity of rural life allowed them to reconnect fully. They walked together along narrow paths, shared meals under the sun, and spent evenings talking by a fire. In this shared experience, the burdens of their everyday responsibilities seemed lighter, and the bond between them strengthened in the calm of shared simplicity. Through these experiences, they began to recognize the importance of mutual support. Love, they realized, was not just about joy and comfort, but about resilience, patience, and understanding. They had to trust that the connection they built could withstand interruptions, conflicts, and moments of doubt. Each challenge became an opportunity to demonstrate care and commitment. Deepening the foundation of their relationship, they also began to reflect on the lessons they had learned individually. He understood that he could not control every aspect of life, and that trying to do so often created unnecessary tension. She recognized that her instinct to carry burdens alone could be softened by sharing them with someone she trusted. These insights allowed them to communicate more effectively, reducing misunderstandings and fostering a sense of shared responsibility. One quiet afternoon, they sat together in a small cafe, sharing thoughts about the future. They spoke gently about hopes, dreams, and aspirations, acknowledging the uncertainties that accompanied any meaningful plan. Neither expected perfection, but both wanted to ensure that their paths aligned in ways that allowed love to flourish. They discovered that planning and intention did not diminish spontaneity, but enhanced the depth and reliability of their connection. As time continued, they faced moments of tension and reconciliation. Learning to navigate emotions without letting misunderstandings fester, they discovered the value of patience, both with each other and with themselves. Anger, frustration, or sadness were no longer avoided but expressed with care and followed by reflection and understanding. They realized that conflict, when managed with empathy, could strengthen rather than weaken the bond. Through these trials, they also deepened their appreciation for the quiet joys of companionship. A shared laugh, a thoughtful gesture, or even the comfort of sitting in silence together became powerful reminders of why they had chosen each other. They discovered that intimacy was not only physical or verbal, but also emotional and spiritual. Built through consistent attention and care, they began to explore shared interests and experiences, finding ways to engage meaningfully beyond daily routines. Walks in parks, visiting local markets, or simply watching a sunset together became cherished moments that reinforced connection. These shared experiences were not extraordinary in themselves, but their value lay in the attention and presence they offered one another. During these times, they also reflected on personal growth. Both realized that love required self-awareness and willingness to improve. He learned to communicate feelings without defensiveness, and she discovered the strength in expressing needs without guilt. They grew individually, even as they grew together. Understanding that a strong relationship depended on the health and maturity of both individuals, challenges continued, but they faced them with a sense of partnership. Decisions about work, family, and personal priorities were made together whenever possible, creating a sense of shared life and mutual respect. They discovered that love was less about grand declarations and more about consistent actions, empathy, and the willingness to prioritize one another even. Amidst life's complexities, the process of navigating difficulties brought a deeper sense of gratitude. They valued the rare connection they had found, recognizing that few relationships offered such understanding and patience. They celebrated not only the joyful moments but also the resilience they demonstrated in facing challenges, understanding that endurance and commitment were as important as attraction and affection. One evening, they walked along a quiet street, reflecting on the journey they had shared so far. The conversation was gentle, unhurried, filled with memories, laughter, and quiet contemplation. They realized that the love they shared was stronger because of the trials they had faced, not in spite of them. Each challenge had been an opportunity to deepen trust, understanding, and intimacy. As night fell, they paused under a street lamp, the city quiet around them. Neither spoke of the future explicitly, but both felt a deep sense of certainty. The bond they had nurtured through patience, empathy, and consistent care had proven resilient. They understood that life would continue to present challenges, but they were confident that together they could navigate whatever came their way. Through this period, they learned that love was an active choice, not a passive feeling. It required attention, understanding, patience, and care, especially when circumstances were difficult. The experiences of growth, separation, and reconciliation became the foundation of a love that was both real and enduring. They also discovered that hope was a crucial part of love. Even in moments of tension, the belief that the relationship could withstand trials provided strength and perspective. They realized that love's true value lay not in perfection, but in the willingness to persist, to care, and to grow alongside someone who shared mutual respect and understanding. And so, life continued with its demands and pressures, its moments of tension and reconciliation. Yet, amidst it all, their bond grew stronger, richer, and more resilient. They had learned that love was not just a feeling of ease and comfort, but a deliberate, consistent practice of care, empathy, and understanding. In this quiet, unassuming way, they nurtured a love that would endure. A love that felt as rare and precious as a dream, slowly unfolding into reality. Time had brought them closer in ways neither had imagined, yet it also tested the limits of patience, understanding, and resilience. The challenges they had faced in previous months had shaped them individually and as a pair, teaching lessons about empathy, trust, and the quiet work of nurturing a relationship. They had learned that love was not merely an emotion felt in easy moments, but a conscious, consistent choice made every day, especially when life became difficult. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows, they found themselves reflecting on their journey. The small apartment was filled with warmth and the scent of freshly brewed coffee, a moment of calm amidst busy routines. They talked about the past, the early days of meeting by chance, the slow unfolding of connection, and the moments of challenge that had tested their bond. Each memory carried laughter, gratitude, and understanding, a reminder of the growth that had taken place. He realized how much he had changed. He was no longer someone who moved cautiously through life, always on the lookout for disappointments or failures. She had taught him patience, the power of listening, and the importance of being present. He had learned to appreciate the small joys of companionship and the quiet depth of trust. Each lesson had been earned, not through dramatic events, but through the steady, consistent presence of someone who cared. She, too, recognized her own transformation. She had learned to allow herself vulnerability, to trust someone with her heart without fear of judgment. She had discovered the joy of shared experiences, the beauty of emotional intimacy, and the strength found in mutual understanding. Through challenges and reconciliations, she had gained a sense of security that had seemed elusive in the past. Their connection now felt like a delicate balance, rooted in respect, care, and shared values. They understood that life would continue to present obstacles, but they also knew that their bond had the resilience to endure. They had faced moments of doubt, minor misunderstandings, and periods of separation. Yet each challenge had reinforced the strength of their commitment. One afternoon, they decided to take a walk along a quiet riverside, a place where they had spent time together during lighter days. The path was lined with trees, their leaves casting gentle shadows on the ground. They walked side by side, sometimes speaking, sometimes sharing the comfortable silence that had become a hallmark of their relationship. There was a sense of peace, of being fully present. That made the ordinary moment feel extraordinary. They spoke about the future, not in grand plans or lofty promises, but in practical terms and shared aspirations. They discussed hopes for personal growth, ways to support each other, and dreams they wished to pursue together. There was an unspoken understanding that life could be unpredictable, but their shared commitment would serve as a guiding anchor. The conversation was grounded, sincere, and filled with optimism tempered by realism. As the day faded into evening, they found a small cafe overlooking the river, where they sat and watched the water reflect the colors of the setting sun. They shared stories from their past, the kind that revealed layers of character and life experience. Laughter flowed easily, and moments of quiet reflection added depth to their connection. Each word, gesture, and glance reinforced the sense of intimacy and understanding that had grown between them. In the following weeks, they continued to nurture the relationship through small but meaningful acts. He learned to anticipate moments when she needed support, offering thoughtful gestures that showed care without expectation. She, in turn, created spaces where he could relax, share thoughts, and feel valued. These consistent, attentive actions became the threads that strengthened the bond, proving that love was built not only in grand moments, but also in the ordinary. Everyday details of life, challenges still arose, as they inevitably would. Work pressures, family responsibilities, and occasional misunderstandings tested their patience and communication. Yet they approached these challenges with the tools they had developed over time: empathy, honest conversation, and a commitment to understanding rather than blaming. Conflicts became opportunities for growth, not reasons for distance. One evening, a disagreement over a minor issue threatened to create tension. But instead of letting frustration dominate, they paused to reflect on their feelings. They expressed concerns calmly, listened fully, and sought compromise. The resolution deepened their respect for each other, reinforcing the trust that had been carefully cultivated over months. They learned that the ability to navigate disagreements constructively was as vital as the moments of joy they shared. Through these experiences, they also discovered the importance of gratitude and acknowledgement. They took time to recognize the efforts made by each other, the quiet acts of care, and the ways they had supported one another through challenges. Appreciation became a daily practice, reinforcing the sense of connection and commitment that underpinned their relationship. They also embraced spontaneity and creativity in their shared moments. Unexpected walks, small adventures, or thoughtful surprises reminded them of the joy of discovering life together. These moments were not extravagant or planned, but they carried significance because they reflected attention and intention, a deep understanding of what made the other person happy as months passed. Their bond became a source of stability and inspiration. They celebrated milestones, supported each other through personal growth, and shared dreams for the future. The relationship, rooted in patience, empathy, and understanding, had grown into a partnership where both felt seen, valued, and cherished. It was a love that thrived not on perfection but on the willingness to grow together, to face challenges side by side, and to nurture each other consistently. They reflected often on how far they had come. From the initial chance meeting to the quiet, steady connection that now defined their lives, the journey had been one of learning, growth, and shared experiences. They recognized that love was not a fleeting, magical feeling, but a deliberate, conscious choice, made daily through care, attention, and mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, they found themselves sitting in a park, watching children play and people passing by. They held hands, a simple gesture that carried profound meaning. In that quiet moment, they realized that the love they shared had matured into something enduring and resilient. It was not about dramatic declarations or perfect moments, but about the quiet confidence that they would face life together, supporting and understanding each other through every challenge and joy in the evenings. They often talked about dreams, hopes, and the life they wanted to build. They spoke of traveling, personal growth, and the small joys they wished to experience together. The conversations were grounded in reality, but filled with a sense of possibility and optimism. They understood that life would always present uncertainties, but their partnership provided a foundation strong enough to navigate whatever came their way. Through reflection, shared experiences, and consistent care, they realized that love had become a part of their very being. It was present in thought, action, and emotion, a continuous thread woven into the fabric of their lives. They had learned to cherish each other, to celebrate both the quiet and joyous moments, and to approach challenges with patience and understanding. As time passed, they found peace in the ordinary, discovering that everyday life could hold extraordinary meaning when shared with someone who truly understands and values you. They laughed, they supported each other, they grew together, and in doing so, they created a love that felt not only real, but precious. A love that could endure through any difficulty. And so, their story continued. Not as a fleeting dream, but as a living, breathing reality. The love that had begun in a quiet, chance encounter had evolved into something rare and beautiful. A connection forged through shared experiences, empathy, patience, and understanding. They knew that life would continue to test them, but they were confident that together they could navigate it all, building a life filled with meaning, joy, and enduring love. In every glance, every gesture, and every shared moment, they found a reflection of the bond that had grown from a simple meeting into a romance so perfect it truly felt like a dream.